Hey everyone, today we're going to look at how to model a tire in Maya. I've been modeling vehicles for over the past 10 years and today I want to show you my favorite way to model a tire. We will cover the best way to use reference, how to use radial symmetry with duplicate special and instancing, and how to model tread using quad draw. At the end, I will also show you an easy way to model lug nuts and valve stems, so make sure to stick around for that. So with that, let's get started. Alright, so here we are in Maya. And the first thing that you're going to want to do is gather reference. You can see here on my pure ref, I have the reference of the Porsche Carrera wheel here, and I have it from different angles. And then I also have the specific tire that I want to model, okay? Now, you can get all of that information almost always from the sidewall. We can see that this is a Goodyear Eagle F1 tire. And actually right here, the 305 30 R21, that's the size of the tire. Now, in this specific instance, the rear wheel is wider than the front wheel. So we're going to work with just one of those wheels. All right. Now that information is broken down here. You can see that in this case, we're going to do a 245 wheel. That's the width in millimeters. And then this is the percentage of the sidewall height. And then the R16 here is just the diameter of the rim. So we have a 21-inch wheel. And this is going to have a width of 245. Now, just a quick tip when you're searching is to just search for the tire itself so you can get better reference, okay? Because you can see I've gone into Photoshop here, and I've broken down the reference in the front view and the side view, and I've went ahead and counted tread. Now, for this specific example, I'm going to be using 72 pieces of tread for radial symmetry, just because that divides into 360 by 5, much cleaner. And then you can see that I am visualizing the pattern of the tread that I'm going to be modeling. So I kind of just take this front view here, and then I go ahead and just do a quick and dirty. All right, here are the repeatable patterns that I'm going to be working with. And it's pretty close. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, but it just helps me plan and visualize and get ready for doing all of this work in Maya. So I'll go ahead and hide this tire tread, and now we can start modeling the tire. So, like I said, let's go ahead and begin by creating the cylinder, or the main body of the tire. So I'm going to go ahead and shift right click to create that cylinder, and I'm going to go ahead and increase this radius quite a bit. Now 21-inch wheel comes out to a radius or a diameter of 53.34. I'm just going to type in 26.67 centimeters as the radius. And then the height here, remember, is the width of the wheel. Okay, now if you're not modeling based off specific dimensions, that's no problem. You can just simply use reference here. So you can see that I have the reference here, so don't feel like you have to have all the specific numbers down. It just helps, all right? And now that we got that, the height, remember, is 245 millimeters. I'm going to just do 24.5 since we're working in centimeters, and there you go. It pops right in to about the width of the rim that we have here, all right? Now that we got the width all set up, I want to update the subdivision axis, since if we go back to my Photoshop, you can see that, remember I said that I'm going to be working without 72 instead of 70. So I'm going to type in 72 subdivisions, all right? And this is just going to kind of help it keep it nice and easy, clean. And then what I want to do is go ahead now and shift click and grab all these faces here. And I want to go ahead now and just create the sidewall. I'm not going to be using specific dimensions. I'm just going to use my reference here. So I'm going to hit Control E for extrude and just move this out. So we're going to want to leave a little bit of room here for the tread since we're going to be extruding out. So about right here, about 4.5 should give us what we need, and we can adjust that as needed. Okay. The next thing I want to do is just grab these faces here. We can just straight up delete them, okay? Then we want to grab these inner edges here, and we're just going to scale these down. I'm going to use just the X and Z plane and just scale these in just a little bit so it kind of gets right in on the wheel, okay? And it's going to be a little bit different between each sides typically, which isn't a big deal. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now that we have that, we're looking pretty good. And we can see that now we want to go ahead and really round this out. And if we look at, again, our reference, we can see that it's rounded out. Now, we can't use this reference for a one-to-one here because we're working in orthographic view from the front view, but we can use it for our tread pattern, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go ahead and actually just load that in. So I want to go to my front camera. I want to go to View, Image Plane, Import Image here. And then I want to find that reference here. And it's going to be this Eagle F1 asymmetric. And I go ahead and hit OK. All right. Then I go ahead, since I know that this is roughly the right size from the front, I'll go ahead and just kind of scale it up here. Now, again, you can see that there's a bit of a distortion because we're not using an orthographic camera, which is fine. So what we're going to want to do here now is go ahead now and use multi-cut and control, right, and middle mouse drag. Now remember, I hold shift right click in sub-object mode, shift right click, and then I can quickly grab that tool. Or you can go to the modeling toolkit here on the right, and then you can select the tool from here, whichever one you prefer. Keep in mind, I am using the workspace modeling standard. Okay, now just to make sure that this reference image doesn't get in our way, you can select it. I'm going to actually throw it in my ref folder here. Go to Attribute Editor here. So you can hit this or Control A. And then what I want to do is go to Image Plane, and I want to do Looking Through Camera. So that makes sure that it's only showing through the camera that I want. So if I go ahead now, you can see it still shows up here in the front view, but not in our perspective view. All right. So what I want to do now is add in another multi-cut. So I'll grab my multi-cut tool and I'll control middle mouse. So it'll put it right in the middle there, which is good, which is what I want. And then I'm going to do that again right along this sidewall here. Now we can be working with symmetry too. That's fine. But this is basically all I'm going to be doing with this tread here, or with this tire. All right, now that we have that, I'm going to grab my move tool, and one of my favorite things to do is grab my move tool with W, hold control, and middle mouse drag. And look at that. We can start to get this nice moving on the normal here for the tire tread. All right, so that's going to help. You can kind of see that it basically stays flat here on the main part of the tread, and then it starts to angle down, and then we get more of that curvature here. Okay, so we get something like this, and you can kind of play with this pattern here, but I think for right now, I'm going to probably grab these ones here, these edges right in the middle. I am going to grab, actually, let's grab our multi-cut tool and add an edge right above the rim, because again, if you look at our reference, a lot of people miss this detail, but you can see that there's this lip here on our reference, okay? This lip that is almost always on every single tire. So you want to make sure that you're not missing that. And that's a big tell, and something that you always want to include in your wheel references. Okay. So I'll go ahead and add that on the other side, and I'll go ahead, grab these faces like so. And I will do an Control E or Shift right click and just do an extrude face. I'm going to just move these in here a little bit. So there's that lip that we were looking for. And we can do maybe minus 0.35, something like that. And what I want to do is actually delete these bottom faces here. Okay, I am using Alt X for X-ray. That is a custom script. You can see that in one of my other tutorials where I show you some modeling tips to quickly move around. So make sure to check that out if you want to see how I'm using X-ray. Otherwise, you can just use this button up here. All right, so far so good. We're getting kind of the base of the tire here. Now we want to get into kind of the core of the modeling, which is modeling the tire tread, okay? So the way that we want to do this, I recommend, is you work with this as your live surface. All right, if you haven't used that before, just select the tire, go up here to this magnet, and do Make Selected Object Live Surface. Now we can start using Quad Draw. So if I grab my Quad Draw tool here, now I can start modeling the piece of the tread. Now we can see that this tread here goes roughly about maybe about halfway or maybe 40% down the sidewall. So we want to make sure to keep that in mind as we're modeling it. And then we're going to continue to model these patterns, and then it's going to be kind of a different pattern on the other side. So let's just start like this, where I'm gonna actually do it right about here on the midway. I think that'll be a good point of reference. And I'm gonna start with just modeling this tread pattern. And again, it's not gonna be a one-to-one, but it's at least gonna let me know what I need to do to make this symmetry. So what you need to do if you haven't used quad draw before is just left click 4 times to draw 4 vertices, hold shift to left click, and there you go. I'm not going to go into crazy amount of quad draw here, but if you're interested, check out all the keyboard mouse shortcuts, but those are basically the main ones that I'm going to be using, along with tab. And if you hold tab and drag, you can see that it just extrudes an edge out, okay? What I am going to do for the sake of simplicity is I do want to hide my rim. So all I'm now looking at is the tire tread. So I will select my faces and let's go back to quad draw. And now we can see this clear as day. All right. So I want to make sure I'm also lined up with the base mesh here. So we can see I'm going to be working on this pattern that I have here. All right. And I'm going to be going here and doing the next set of faces. Okay, there we go, something like that. And we're going to keep going here to the rest of these faces. All right, now if you want to get these more or better aligned, you can for sure. But I'll show you how to adjust these in just a moment. Okay, so you can see I'm just making my way. Now this one's interesting because it's just a straight line. There's no divots, but we essentially are going to do the same thing and do a cut. Now, normally you'll have issues if you try to do this too close to another face. So just simply hit left or tab, hold tab, left click, and there you go. You can just drop a face on there. All right. So I'll go ahead now and create this tread pattern here. And then we're going to create this last one, which I'll go ahead and do so like this. And you can see this one has a little bit more curvature like so. Okay, so we're just continuing on. Actually, I'm going to just tab left click to drop that face. And we got this here. And we're just going to move these vertices into position. Remember, I'm using the tire edge flow as the guide. And then I'm dropping these faces here. Okay, remember, don't get too caught up with the differences in distortion here, not a big deal. And we're going to fix that. This is it, right? This is the pattern that I have right here, as you can see. And then now you can see I duplicated it, and now we're going to use radial symmetry with duplicate special to get this, okay? Now, you can, of course, if you wanted to model some extra detail, but I'm going to keep this fairly simple, all right? So here we are. So we have our tread here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn off Make Selected Live Objects. And what we're going to do here is use Duplicate Special. So with this tread selected, make sure, just in case, that your pivot is the origin. Keep in mind that I am using the center 000 as my world origin. And my main point of symmetry. So in case you're modeling this off of an existing vehicle and you're not at the 000, you're going to have to adjust it and make sure that that pivot point is the center of this wheel, which is what my 000 is. So let's go ahead now and select the tread. We're going to go to modify, edit and duplicate special. Duplicate special, I'm going to go ahead and hit the dialog window right here. You can see that I actually have this. This is what duplicate special is. Then by default, if I reset settings, you can see it's set to copy. I'm going to set this to instance. Okay. Then I'm going to make sure that I use 360 degrees, right? So if you can see, we have 72 pieces of tread. So I'm going to do 360 degrees divided by 72, which gives us 5. So I want this to rotate 5 degrees. And I want this to rotate 72 versions of these. So not including this, 71. With the original, that's 72. And once I have that instance, the right amount, and we are using the z-axis here, or XYZ, when we rotate, just to verify before we go any further, you can see that it's rotating on the Z. So we go ahead and hit apply. There you go. And then now we have the copy of our tread here, okay? So what you're gonna notice is it doesn't exactly line up all the way at the end here, which is no big deal. So this is where instancing, or the power of instancing, comes back into play. What I'm actually going to do is select the object, our tire, turn on make live again, and go back to our original surface here. And I'm going to go ahead now and use this here. You can see kind of what's happening. It's kind of overlapping a bit. So I'm going to go back to our modeling toolkit, and this is my favorite part, is with instancing and with quad draw, look at that. We can start to align this and get this to look exactly how we want it with all the correct spacing that we want, right? So we're just adjusting like so, and then we're going to move this down. We're going to get that space. If this is overlapping, then we'll just create more space here like so. This one is basically going to be lined up exactly because we're going to merge these at the end. And we're going to go ahead and do this tread like that. And look at that. It's updating throughout the entire set of tread here. This is my favorite part. There we go. Okay. Now, keep in mind, you want to always be looking at your reference. So if I pull up my pure ref again, take a look at what we got. Okay. And you can see kind of how our tread is modeled and how it looks, and we're going to keep this as our reference here on the side. All right, and you can see that we want a good noticeable amount of gap. Now what I also recommend is just to go ahead and kind of scale it so these edges become planar like so. So it becomes nice and straight. I'm just selecting each one of these edges and scaling in the x-axis to completely straighten them out. All right, something like so. And we can actually do this in the opposite direction. Maybe this one. Yeah, there we go. And this Y. And then we'll continue to do these all in the x-axis. Okay. Or sorry, I said x-axis. Meant the Z. Well, I guess it's set to object. You can always set it back to world and get that to be based off the original XYZ and not local. All right, so there we go. We're setting this here, and we can keep that to world. And there we go. Now, we want to make sure if we check our reference here from the front, I'll turn off the grid. And the nice thing is you don't need the original model, the original piece. You can use any piece on here to adjust up accordingly, okay? So we can kind of see now we're going to have to extrude to get this going here. And what I want to do is move this up just a little bit, and we're going to want to actually extrude this out. All right, so I think this is good enough. I think you get the idea as far as how to create the pattern using quad draw. Now go ahead and select one of these pieces and shift right click, and let's go ahead and do an extrude. So I can go ahead and do, I want to click off of this, actually turn off make live. So we're about done with that. And then shift right click extrude. All right. And boom. Look at that. We got our tread. All right. Now we're going to have to obviously do some adjustments here. But I basically want to extrude it to roughly about that, 1.5, 1.3-ish. Maybe 1.25, right in the middle. I think this is good enough here. Okay, so that's looking good there. And I think you may be wondering, well, why don't you just model the tread into this original base mesh? You 100% can, but I'm gonna tell you right now, that's not necessary, honestly. All that's gonna do is overcomplicate your geometry. And when this thing is modeled, you can see clear separations between tread, between sidewall. And I've been doing, again, renderings for quite a while, and we always just keep the tread separate from the base sidewall or the donut of the wheel. And has been no benefits, at least on our end, when rendering, to have to do that, to keep it complicated. If you wanted to, you can just apply the same technique, just all with one combined mesh, okay? So what I'm gonna do now is just kind of hold Control Shift, middle mouse drag this, and we're gonna bring this down here. And I'm gonna hold Control middle mouse. I'm just gonna move this on the normal here. And you can kind of see what we're doing here, right? So again, if you kind of look at it from this front view here, you can make your adjustments there. And just making sure that we kind of have this nice curvature and fall off that goes down, right? We don't want it to be, because this is what it looked like before. And here's where we're at now, all right? So just kind of a nice gradual move on the normal and bring this down, Control middle mouse, slide, okay? So here's where we're at, and I think I'm not gonna spend too much time here, but you get the overall idea. I'll just kind of clean these edges up here. Something like that, and you can see it's matched up to our original surface here, right? So what I then wanna do is actually go into face mode and delete these, right? If I smooth preview, I actually want to delete the back sides, the original faces here. Like so. Now, what I actually do recommend is if you're working and experimenting, go ahead and just take this tread and duplicate it and save it, just in case you want to come back and make some modifications, okay? So again, we're just kind of going back, and I'm going to delete these faces on the back side. Delete. And then what I want to do is go ahead now and add my holding lines, okay? So I'm going to add these holding lines like this, and you can see them adding on all of my mesh here. And we get something like so. All right, be careful not to add them here, right? We don't want that. That's supposed to smooth out pretty nicely. And we'll just add more holding lines here. And we're just continuing to do that on the rest of the mesh. And with instancing, again, we're saving a tremendous amount of time and being very, very efficient. Now here, remember, this connects with this here. So I'm actually not going to do that yet until after I combine it, because what I want to do is delete these faces on the inside, right? Because if, again, we look at our reference, you can see that it's one solid piece, like so. And delete that. And now you can actually select move and vertex snap, and look at that. We can snap these, so they're basically all perfectly in the same position. And when we go ahead to merge this, there won't be any issues. And we've got to make sure we delete that. So I'm just toggling 3. For smooth preview. All right. So continuing on here, we have this like so. And we're just going to go ahead and finish this off. All right. I think that's good enough. Now hit smooth preview and take a look at our tread, right? And we'll fix this one here in a second. All right. So now that we got that, I would say our tread is pretty much all good to go. We now want to bring back our rim, okay? And we want to finish detailing the rim. Now remember, based off our reference, you can see that we have this nice bead that runs across here. And you can see that in our reference. A little bit hard to see that in that one. Actually, here we go. There's a high res one. This bead that goes across, you typically find that in almost all tires. So I'll go ahead now, back to multi-cut, and it's always right where that tread ends up, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and add that. And right here, this should be good enough. And what I'm gonna do is just kind of grab these faces and just kind of scale them. So it's a little bit more flat, and then I'll do the same thing on this side. scaling them in the Z, so it flattens it out. So look at the difference between here and here. Great. Then I'll go ahead and grab that face again for that bead and hit extrude face and just move these out here a little bit. Just like so. This is a really subtle detail, and maybe even 0.1 extrude, something like that. All right. Then we're going to want to go ahead now and multi-cut, shift right click, and control middle mouse right in the middle here and right in the middle. And this is going to give us that nice edge to control the surface and roundness from the side view. So if I go ahead now and do that, move it like so, and I think that's good there. And we can maybe move this edge back here. But I think you get the idea. We're just kind of moving and manipulating these edges like so. Now, back to our multi-cut, and we're going to add holding lines. So you can see where I'm adding them. I'll isolate this with Control 1, grab multi-cut, and then I will start inserting the edge loops. Basically, right around here to hold this form. And then now if I hit 3, take a look at that. We got this nice bead that kind of runs around. And we're going to want to add it on the other side. And it's not perfectly symmetrical, which is why I'm not using symmetry. But you probably can to get away with it and then adjust it. But really, really easy modeling functions. And then I'm just going to add some holding lines here. You can see I'm adding this like so. So we get that kind of divot here. And you can see kind of what that does is that goes around the lip of the wheel. Like so. All right. And if we wanted to, you can make sure that matches more closely. And I'll grow my selection with Control period. And I'll actually deselect this and move these back just a hair. All right, so we're getting into just the final detailing here, like so, and it goes right around it so it doesn't clip the tire. Okay, so you get something like this, which looks good. Smooth preview the tire, good. All right, and that's looking pretty nice. Just got to finish this part out here, where we have this coming off on the tread. And I'll just make sure to move that accordingly. There we go. And add the holding lines. Boom, boom, boom. All right. There we go. So that's it for the most part. Now we can, of course, bring this down a little bit more. So it's there isn't like this hard inset, remember. It is much more subtle, so we can bring that down. And I'll bring this like so. What I'll actually do is remove these two edges like this and bring these vertices here and really shorten that lip here. We might even delete this one too. Control backspace. Then it's just a simple matter of fact of just adding those back. Okay, and you get something like this. And if it's clipping a little bit, no big deal. You can just move that out. Like so. All right, and then you get a really, really nice looking tread, and we can make sure to bring these all down just a little bit so they're not floating. And here we go, last bit here, and I can show you how to kind of wrap this up. And maybe deselect that one. I'll come back for these ones and just move these down so they start to intersect on the original model. Okay, we get something like this. All right, so just a little bit of cleanup there. Okay, and you can do the same thing to that lip on this side, but I think you guys get it. All right, and what I would typically do here is save this. So I would save this and then save again as an iteration. So Control Alt S. So that saves that work iteration, because now I can always come back and, let's say if I wanted to do something or, you know, change this in any way, I can later. But if I'm happy with what I got now, this is good. All right. And what I can do is go ahead now and just combine all the tire tread. All right. Now, because these are instances, you have to go to modify. Oh, wait, actually delete history, freeze transforms. Or no, freeze transforms won't work because they're instances, but delete history, modify, and then go to convert, and then do instance to object. Instance to object, great. Now we can combine these because they're all objects. And you can shift right click, combine. And I'll control 1, isolate. Now what I can do is grab these faces here and give a little bit bigger view here. Okay, make sure I only have those, and control right click and go to vertices, and then shift right click, merge vertices, and go to merge vertices. Boom. And use something like 0.03 just to make sure to grab those last bits of edges. And if you hold 3, great, that merged fine. Now we can add in our holding lines. Boom, boom, and then just everything's gonna look good. All right, control 1, exit isolate mode. There you go. Okay, so things are looking good there. Oops, we missed one right here. Oh, I didn't even combine that. So I missed that combine, that was my fault. So just double checking and combine. I will have to redo this part here. Okay, and then I fixed that. I'll go ahead and just add the holding lines again. All right. So there we are with the tread. Oh, I guess one tip I would recommend is to make sure to unwrap the tread before you delete or before you combine. That way you have them unwrapped. But otherwise, that was it for that. And we have this all set up, and we have our tire tread, and there we go. That is essentially how I do complex tire treads with the sidewalls, and it's way easier to unwrap this way, way easier to texture, and you just get overall really good high quality tire tread. All right, now the last thing I wanted to quickly show you is how to get kind of complex lug nuts. So what you're going to want to do, create a cylinder. Now, if you can take a look at the reference here, you can see that this is a 6-sided cylinder, and then it starts with 6 hard edges and then gets into smooth edges. So what I typically do, you can see I have this here, is I would start with, these it says 60, but that's 5. So we have 12-sided cylinder here. So if I go to this cylinder, I'm going to move this out here like so, rotate this 90 degrees, and create a 12-sided cylinder. Okay, so this is going to be for the smooth side, which is great, and we'll keep it with the radius of 1, and we can see, actually I'd want to bump that up maybe to a radius of, you know, 1.4 ish. Okay, and set this back here on the 0 and the 0y. All right, so now that I have this, what I can do is go ahead and extrude, Control E or Shift right click, and do a quick offset. Okay, so we're gonna do this part here, and this is the part that we have to flatten out, right? So what I want to do is go ahead now and extrude this out like so. And you can kind of see what I mean here. So what I'm going to do now is essentially just select every other, right? And what I'll make sure is grab symmetry for this one and do it with world X. Okay, so we grab every other edge like so. And if we look at a reference, we got a flat bottom, flat top, and out on the corner. Flat bottom, flat top. Okay, so I'll do other. All right, and if I control backspace this, you can kind of see what happens. And you want to make sure to continue that down like so. All right, and what I actually want to do before I do that is add an edge right here on the middle. Okay, that's going to stop this from continuing on here. All right, so like I said, I'll do these sets of edges like so. All right, control backspace. There you go. That is essentially the lug nut shape that we're looking for. And then I can grab these right here, right? And then this is the one that kind of extrudes in. But before I do that, right, we want this to subdivide. We're creating this as a sub-D model. We want to make sure now to take this and to cut this and get a nice corner. So what I'm going to do is extrude this and offset it a little bit. So maybe 0.2 is fine. Then I'm going to add an edge right here. Okay. This edge on a flat surface is exactly what I need to create this hard crease here. So what do I mean? I'm going to go ahead now and connect these like so. And we're just going to cut this and take a look at that. And then this is going to give us that nice transition to go from nice circular geometry to nice hard geometry. Now, the good thing is, because this is on a flat surface, triangles are perfectly fine. Okay, so triangles are perfectly fine here, like so. And we're just going to finish cutting this. There you go. All right. So what I mean is this edge right here is holding all of these triangles and it will work completely fine. And because they're not on the edge, it's not going to cause any artifacting. So I move that, and then I will offset this a little bit. Something like so. Now comes everyone's favorite part, which is adding the holding lines. Holding line. Line there. And then we're going to add one right here. Add one right here. Okay. So if you go ahead and smooth preview, you get something like this. Okay. And we can add one there as well. That's how you quickly create a lug nut. Now what you can do is take this edge here and scale that down a little bit, so that kind of is a little bit more tighter. Or what I actually probably recommend is just going in here and beveling this edge. So I'm going to remove this one, and we got this edge here. If I go ahead and do a bevel and turn on chamfer, let's see what chamfer does. There you go. And we may want to tighten that up a little bit. And chamfer is going to see if you see the difference here. It's going to make sure that it keeps that right angle, which is what we want in this case. Go. All right. Oops, looks like I missed this. So we definitely want to make sure just to go in and add these, this part here. Go. And as usual, on a hard surface object, we'll make sure to add a Fong material. I would say probably Fong 1. Oh, that will be Fong 2. All right. Anyways, just so we can kind of see it a little bit lighter. And adding these nice holding lines. There you go. So look at that. Circular, hexagonal, circular. And you get a perfectly nice lug nut. And if you wanted to, you can do an extrusion back here. But that is essentially how I created these lug nuts here. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful. And literally for this part here, all I did was take the hexagonal shape like this. All right, and I will grow selection till right about there and delete those, and I will extrude. Extrude again, but this time I will merge the vertices to the center. So shift right click, merge to center. Move this out a little bit. Actually, I want to extrude this again. Control E. Offset that a little bit. Move this out. And there you go. That's it. I mean, the valve stem is basically the, in this case, the lug nut, just with an extrusions out instead of inward. And then I can do this last bit here where I do a really small, maybe 0.1 offset here, 0.1, and just move that in like something like that, right? And you can get something that looks like this little dimple there that we see in the reference, right? Mine was a little bit too big, but you get the idea. That's exactly how you would do that there. I'll just hide that. But okay, all right, I hope that was helpful. These are a lot of the tips and tricks that I use for modeling wheels, lug nuts, valve stems, tire tread. Let me bring that lovely tire that we have here that we originally modeled. And yeah, I'm really happy how this all came out, and this was quick and efficient, probably, you know, just a couple hours worth of work and a little cleanup. And you can get a nice high res, high detailed wheel for your CG renders. So if you guys found that helpful and enjoyed the tips and tricks and anything, or if you even have any recommendations, throw it down in the bottom below. And this wraps up my modeling wheels mini series. So if you guys have something for the next set of tutorials, I'm all ears. Let me know down below, and we can go from there. Thanks again, everyone, and stay safe.